Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement in lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Chris, thanks for joining Lawyers Who Learn. I'm excited to continue the conversation we had at the Legal Tech Fund Summit.
So am I. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So if I can recall, we were sitting outside at the second night. It was by the pool. Maybe you saw me speak somewhere else or mention something. And I think the first thing you said to me is, "I'm a longtime Lawline customer." Am I remembering that correctly?
You're remembering it perfectly. And the only thing I would add is that it was a nice warm weather and a great venue. So, which is different than what the world is like in Philadelphia these days. But
Yes, for sure, and New York as well. And we started talking, and we're going to get into obviously talking about what the value or unvalue, I guess, just some of your experiences with Lawline. But one of the things as we started talking is you told me you were the CEO of Access Lex Institute, and I had never heard of it before, and it sort of intrigued my interest. So before we get into your learning journey and your learning path, and just to give you a sense, the purpose of this podcast is to think about the attorney, the aspiring attorney, who is trying to grow in their career and they want to learn from your experiences. And you generally have a theme. I have some ideas for a theme. I'll just throw it out to you.
mm-hmm.
Because you deal with giving, financial aid, or if that's the right way to say it, to students. I do want to sort of talk about the cost of legal education, but in a learning component. So we'll see if we get there. But first, because maybe a lot of people don't know what Access Lex Institute is, and I like the logo on there. I should start doing that. Just give us a sense of what the nonprofit is, and how big it is.
Sure. So Access Lex Institute is, as you said, is really below the radar screen to the general world, but we are the largest not-for-profit entity supporting legal education in the United States. We have an endowment that is approaching $1 billion. And the best way to describe what we do, or at least the shortest way to describe what we do, is the tagline we use, which is empowering the next generation of lawyers. And we do that in many ways, but what we're really looking at is helping aspiring lawyers from their admission to law school through their admission to the bar. And we do that, like I said, in multiple ways. We do it, we have a research and advocacy component, which helps students and schools make data-driven decisions about what works, what doesn't, and how much it costs to do that. We have a grant program that supports our research programs, but also supports pathway programs to help underrepresented socioeconomic and racial minorities primarily gain access to law school, and through various programs. We operate tons of programs and services to support students and schools, from everything from a product called Explore JD, which is the first step of your journey towards law school, which allows you to put in your own personal criteria on a guided journey for what's important for you for law school, and then help you match law schools that meet those criteria. Much different and much more nuanced than a U.S. News or other ranking system, ordinal ranking system. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have a Helix Bar Review, which is a full-service, full-scale bar preparation program with everything you need to pass the bar, and priced in a way that only a nonprofit who doesn't need profits can do for the students. The organization itself. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think you shared so many amazing and valuable services that you provide. Just to start with the first one, the $1 billion endowment. How much do you lend how much do you lend every year? And is it lending or is it
No,
actual financial aid? The
no,
full.
so that gets into kind of our origin story. So Access Lex was created in 1983 when law schools were really starting to, at scale, admit more women, more people of color, more people from non-wealthy backgrounds, and the law schools were having a hard time getting financing from the banks at the time, and so our organization was created with all of the U.S. law schools that are nonprofit or state entities. Was created to go out and find banks who would make loans to these non-traditional students, and so we, from those humble beginnings, grew to be the largest lender in the legal education space in a nonprofit model. And so by the early 2000s, we were lending almost $2 billion a year to support students going to law school. In 2011, the federal government, they didn't actually take over that business, but they created loan programs that, using the power of the U.S. Treasury and the subsidy power of the government, made those loans by far the best economic choice for students, and took all of the private sector out of that space. And so what we did at that time is, our nonprofit business was gone. And we did other things then too around the financial aid side. What we did is we knew that as the loans we had, even though we didn't make a lot of money on the loans, we made a lot of loans, and we had a lot of capital built up in to support the financing of those. We knew that as they paid off, they would create what has now become our endowment of almost $1 billion. And so from 2000, say 12, 13, we pivoted, knowing that we were going to be able to have the resources to continue our mission, but just in a different way. And so now our work with students really is, we do provide some scholarships. We provide some scholarships support, but we really are focused on leveraging our dollars to help ensure that access increases at law school, affordability increases at law school, and the value of law school increases for the students who go there. And again, we do that directly through programs. We do it through using our voice, which can be loud, and through other activities.
Got it. Two quick questions, just out of curiosity. Where did that $1 billion come from originally?
So the original seed money came from, we got to start as a division of the Law School Admission Council, which puts on the law school admission test. And so they created the division, gave some startup capital, but at the beginning, we weren't lending anything. We were going and finding banks. If you remember the early 80s, and I don't specifically remember it, but because I was in high school then, but banking was very local. There wasn't a Chase on every corner. There wasn't a Bank of America on every corner. You walked up to your local bank and filled out a paper application and signed it. And banks, and the student loans like no other consumer loan. You're giving somebody with no job and no income a loan.
So I'm confused. So where's the money from?
The money came from us finding banks who would make loans to say 50 students and them giving a finder's fee, and to get a new customer. And then that built up over the 1980s to where the organization spun out with about $30 million and said, go make loans. And
just to make sure I understand, this is,
yeah,
as a side point, the organization turned $30 million into $1 billion? No, I'm hearing that.
Yes, you're hearing that correctly.
From
basically 1992, 93.
Just from the interest on loans, or they also worked with some private money managers to manage them?
From pretty much from the interest on loans.
Fascinating. Okay.
We've made probably over the course of our history, probably $24 to $25 billion in loans.
From a $30 million.
Yes.
Okay. A show for another day.
Yes.
So now now what I understand what you're saying, which now is bringing back some of the memories from our conversation originally, which I'm glad we took people along that path, because we kind of discussed this as well, which is important to understand your origins. You have probably very close relations. I think you said around 200 law schools, and you are probably their best friend, because if they want money and they want to do a program helping prepare attorneys for the future of law, and they, I guess, want a grant, they can apply to you for a grant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you have can any law school create a sort of an ask and then send it to you, or do you have specific programs that they have to fit certain requirements?
There are both. There are both, and let me talk about. There are specific programs. So, for instance, we have programs related to increasing diversity. We have programs relating to increasing academic success, increasing bar success, that are very specific. They're on our website. They have very specific criteria, a very specific timed application period, and all of the things you would imagine like through a typical grant program. We also have grant programs that we create a program such as our bar exam success analysis, where we go find schools that are willing to participate and give us data, and then we help them understand what's happening with their students and what works and what doesn't. And then the third part, which is, can schools just put something over the transom? And the answer is yes, but it's usually a collaborative process where we're looking for a certain type of research or a certain type of program to be done. And so we'll be talking generally about that, and schools will come, and then we'll work through exactly what that looks like. And those, we call those directed grants. And so they're not really, they're not fully over the transom, but they're close to it. And so we do get that, and we get lots of grant requests. And just like everybody else who has grants, we give a few out, and a lot of people we have to say no to. When I first got into this, as a former finance guy, I was like, this is great. Everybody's going to be my friend. I'm going to get to give grants to people. And then I realized that when you have to say no to 95% of the people, it's not everybody's going to be your friend.
Out of curiosity, does it have to be a law school, or let's say Lawline wanted to build a program for law students?
So it doesn't have to be a law school, but traditionally, it's a nonprofit entity, and we have given out grants to non-law schools, primarily more undergraduate institutions who are running pathway programs. But there's nothing that prohibits us from doing something like that. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't come up with one that we have, or that anybody even asks, for that matter.
Got it. And how much, out of curiosity, like ballpark, how much do you actually give away each year?
About $2.5 million right now. That'll be going up over time as our endowment is expanded, where our spend will expand, and we're actually looking at a few new grant programs that are kind of under development right now that will probably launch over the next 12 to 18 months.
And again, maybe I'm not educated in this area, but like, if you have $1 billion and you're just making 5% on that, treasury bond or whatever,
yeah,
50 million a year, if my calculations are correct. A lawyer, so it might not be. $2.5 million doesn't sound like a lot to be giving away. So I just want to get a sense, like, what is the
right? And it's not. And so I often, one of my catchphrases I talk all the time when I talk about what we do is that we're not a grant making organization. We're an organization that makes grants. So we basically, we the shorthand is admission to admission is what we talk about. And so, but we really have we have a multi-line operation here. Like I said, we have this research, advocacy, and grant side, which is what I'd say kind of looks more traditionally kind of foundation-like or philanthropic. But then we have, these quasi-commercial activities like the Helix Bar Review Program. But then we have educational programs. So like we'll run, and we do this on a national basis too. This isn't, this is at every law school. So we have our Max Financial Education Program, which is a custom developed financial education program designed for law schools to provide, from the beginning of their journey until the end of law school with timed modules and timed lessons to assist them along the way, not only with student loans and law school financing, but everything from, credit to investing and the like. That we have, 40,000 law students participate in that program.
Well, let's talk about these two things, because this is about lawyers who learn. And I think where the theme is evolving here, which obviously makes a ton of sense, is you are completely focused in helping law students accelerate their learning in some form. So first, let's talk about Helix. How you said, and that's not for profit, that's something you sell. How big is it? What does it cost? Because like you said, if it's less than Barbary or someone else or LexisNexis, where do you fit in that area? Because I've never heard of Helix before until we met the first time.
Right. So Helix kicked off in the summer of 2022 was its first use for a bar exam. It's been very successful from a pedagogical standpoint, meaning people who do it, take it, pass the bar at very high rates. It's been success operationally. It's up, it works, it's efficient, and it's been a success experientially. People who use it like it and love it. But as a nonprofit, one of the things when we went into Helix, and it's growing, slower than we'd like, but steadily growing. One of the things as a nonprofit when we looked into doing Helix is we looked at the marketplace and saw, what is essentially a oligopic pricing model. Just a couple players had the lion's share of the market and were able to price as such. And when we looked into how much it actually cost to deliver one of these programs, you could see that oligopic pricing. You could see how it was well north of the marginal cost of the product pricing, which should be in a competitive market. And so we said, we're going to try to do for the bar exam prep market what we did for the student loan market, which was utilize our nonprofit structure, utilize the freedom we have as a nonprofit to not only provide a great product at a great price, but to affect the market and drive the price down. And so for an example, if we could drive the market price down $250, so pretty much 10% from what the current pricing was before we were in the market, we could do $250. That's $10 million a year that stay in the pockets of law students and law graduates. If you do it 500, it's 20 million, and so on and so on. So for as a nonprofit, you think about return on investment. If it costs us $8 million to build and we're returning $10 million, $15 million, $20 million every year, that's a pretty good nonprofit outcome. We're doing more than that. So we now have the pricing down $1,000 from when we got into the market because these other players, they're going to try to protect their market share. And the beauty of this model for us is unlike a normal startup who can come in and can run out of money, we aren't going to run out of money. And so we've affected some lasting change, not only in pricing, but in quality as they've sought to take their legacy programs and catch up with ours, who we had the benefit of building from the ground up at the latest pedagogy and technology.
So just so I'm clear, you said you brought it down to cost $1,000 or $1,000 less?
About $1,000 less.
What is the cost?
So the latest pricing for Barbary, which typically has been charging $29.99, is now $16.99. Themis, who's offering prices north of $2,000, are now into the $14.99, $13.99, and they run discounts all the time, even off of that. But where we really see it, that's the retail side. Where we're really seeing it is at the a wholesale side. So a lot of schools will buy these programs for all their students, and so we have some real good visibility on that because there's RFP processes and the like, and those prices have driven down even more. There's bulk discounting essentially when you sell to a school that everybody does, and so we're affecting pricing very directly there, which is keeping more money.
But just so I understand, maybe I missed it. Is yours free or you charge for yours?
No, we charge for it.
And what do you charge?
Our retail price, our rack rate is $11.99.
Got it.
All
right, because if it's free, there's no in a way it's value.
Yeah, we did lots of market research around that. And if it's free, you're con and nobody uses it.
Got it. So it's been growing not as fast as you would like.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned in that process of you're charging less, you have a great, like you said, pedagogy, you don't have the brand name, is that it?
Well, I think there is a little of the old sod, nobody got fired for choosing IBM, right? And but I think it's a level of conservativeness about the influencers. So, by definition, there aren't law professors who've taken Helix yet. And so every law professor there took Barbary or maybe Themis. And so when students ask them, they say, oh, well, this is what I took. And look, this is a competitive business. I give the competitors some credit. They aren't sitting idly by.
Sure.
And there's I would say the best argument that's being utilized against us, besides now we're not new anymore, which we used to be new, and we're proven now. But the best argument that I've heard is one of them is saying, well, you spent $100,000, $150,000 on a law school. Why do you want to go cheap now? They're trying to devalue it in that way.
Certainly Barbary, they're owned by a PE firm, and they're in the CLE space now. They're doing the whole cradle to grave because
Mm-hmm.
they're looking to expand beyond
Mm-hmm.
bar prep for reasons that you're saying now. Do you know where you fall in the size in the market compared to everybody else, or you're not?
Yeah, we're probably fourth in the market right now.
Yeah. And are you actually spending money on marketing and sales, acquisition? Do you have sales people? And
yes.
It wouldn't, if I'm a law school, knowing that your cost less and assuming I believe the results and that it's just as good or even better, wouldn't this be something I'd be strongly pushing to my students? It's a nonprofit as well, right?
Yeah.
So
yes. Well, you would think so, but again, I go to some of the conservative nature. One of the ways law schools are structured, for the most part, there may be exceptions to this, is that the persons who are tasked with the title of director of bar support or director of academic support are typically untenured positions. So they operate on contracts, year to year, maybe 2 years at the most, and they can be terminated, at will if the results are bad. And so if you can imagine, no matter what you think as a prep person, there's some risk in you choosing somebody like us versus Barbary if things go south. Because again, if you go in and say, hey, boy, our pass rate went down this year, and we used Helix versus, well, our pass rate went down, but we use Barbary like we always do. And, I don't know. There's, again, whether it's a real fear or not, feels like there's some safety in numbers, and it's getting over that hump is a challenge for us.
Can you share how many students, just to get a sense of scale, have used Helix?
Right now it's proprietary.
Okay, that's fair. That's why I asked.
So enough have done it.
Is the passes rate public?
Yes.
So how does it compare?
It's typically a little better, broadly speaking, than theirs, but a point or two here and there. It's
On
you know,
par.
the bottom line of passage things is that if you do the work you
Well,
should be able to pass.
totally. Well, what's really interesting is, I talk to law students now, when I took Barbary, first of all, it was in person, but like I was just watching a recording, or somebody was just in there, literally, they could have been a recording. And so from talking to people now, no, that doesn't exist anymore. It's all online. And that's why even though it was in person, it was why it was more expensive. And now the costs have been brought down because it's still online. So like take me for, well, two things. One, it's also interesting because the normal solution would be to buy you, but you're not for sale, and you won't be for sale because you're a nonprofit. So that's really interesting. And all of your competitors know that. Secondly, my question is, where do you see bar prep over the next few years going? How is AI going to have an impact on this space in terms of cost? Can it go down to zero, or obviously to what we just said before, but where do you see things going?
So bar prep is going to be interesting going forward, and it actually is I think a great opportunity for schools, for students, and for people like us to kind of improve how bar prep is done. So you may be familiar with something called the next gen bar exam. Okay, so about 40 plus jurisdictions right now use something called the uniform bar exam, which is put out by the National Conference of Bar Examiners. So 40 jurisdictions use the same exam, same questions, same dates, and it allows for portability without having to take another bar exam. So if you pass the uniform bar exam in Texas, you can practice in Minnesota, you can practice in Washington, you can practice in Arizona, provided your score is sufficient to be. There's not uniform cut scores, but more or less portability exists for the most part. And so anyway, this all was kind of operating in starting in 2026 and rolling through to 2028. That exam is going to go away, and there's something called the next gen bar exam, which is materially different than this bar exam, the current UBA bar exam, which would look very similar to the bar exam you took or the bar exam I took. A multiple choice day, an essay day, and multi-state performance exam. I guess that's different than when I took.
That's the uniform bar exam you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that's the uniform bar exam.
The next gen is it
And
online?
next gen, and so that requires lots of memorization, lots of knowing the very arcane exceptions for the multiple choice, and it was very much criticized as not relating to anything a lawyer would actually need to do. And so next gen tries to fix that by having these integrated question sets, which are shorter questions, shorter answers, less things to have to memorize, and more things where you have the material. Essentially, it's not quite open book, but all the things you need to do. So for instance, you might have the law and then have to apply that to a problem. And it's designed to not only test less memorization, but it's designed to test more skills and more issue.
This sounds like a huge deal.
It is a huge deal.
So is bar prep going to have to be completely changed, or is it?
I would say 80% changed. So we've been building for a couple of years. Everybody's been building. We have the benefit as actually we have partnered with the National Conference of Bar Examiners, who's building the test to help them develop some practice questions. So we've been working with them as we build on our own as well.
And what was, if we could sum it down to like 1 to 3 things, what was the biggest? Well, you said the multiple choice questions was one. What's the 20% that's staying?
The subject matter, the
Got
content,
it. So besides that, right. So
the need
you
to
still need to
memorize.
know the content, but just not the
Yes.
tricks on it. Okay.
But some of the you don't need to know as much of the content. You don't need to memorize as much of the content
Got it.
anymore.
Wow. I don't know if I'm just uninformed or if everybody else knows this, or if so. Okay.
So New York just adopted it for I don't know which year, but they just approved adopting the next gen.
Got it. So, okay, that's good to know. All right. So, but let me take you back to my original question, which was where do you see bar prep going?
Well, I see bar prep really. I think bar prep is going to get pushed further back into the law schools. Right now, bar prep is typically, while many schools have advanced their in-school efforts, particularly in the third year, because the ABA tightened the standards on pass rates a few years ago. Traditionally, bar prep has been left to people like the bar prep companies. You go to law school, you learn to think like a lawyer, you do whatever you do in law school. Professors don't teach to the bar, they don't do that. And then you get out in May and you take 10 weeks and you crank it out and take the bar exam. Because the new bar exam is focused on skills more so. It's more heavily focused on skills and less on just rote memorization. Those skills really need to be focused and taught during law school because 10 weeks isn't enough. And also it's hard to teach those things online, right? Like what we do. And so
just want to make sure I understand, how are they testing those skills?
They're testing it through integrated question sets, so in performance tests. So again, it's still in the context of a standardized test, so it's not perfect testing of skills. But so they'll be testing kind of research and issue spotting. So for instance, they might give you a couple paragraphs and say, identify the issues and where would you go to learn more about that kind of thing, and how would you go about doing your research on that program. Or you would, for instance, there's what's called these integrated question sets around client counseling. So you have this problem, how would you counsel this client? What would you do? And so again, those are things that, that takes practice, and it takes understanding of how to do that. And so what we're doing at AccessLex, and we've given out the first set for the 1L classes, is we've created these building bar skills modules, which are modules that can be dropped right into the curriculum for a doctrinal professor to utilize to help their students start training on how to answer these questions within the context of their doctrinal course. So you're getting practice for the bar exam without it really early in understanding how to answer these questions, because it's not like a law school exam where you would typically, get a long list. And
that's super interesting, at least on paper. Like you're creating a bar exam that's actually more reflective of what's like to practice law. So when you're actually taking in your class, preparing for the exam, you're preparing for the right things to help you practice law anyway. So it's a win-win versus a bar prep exam. And did you say there is no more multiple choice, or there still is?
There are multiple choice program questions built into the set. There's not a standalone multiple choice.
So I go both ways here. In a way, it might be an opportunity to grow for bar prep companies because it is new. But it's new, but not to the students, and they've never done it before. So maybe, yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah, my view is it should be less expensive on the back end for students. From what we haven't fully built ours out yet, so we don't know there. But you mentioned AI and how that affects it. And so there's a couple of things, like so obviously for like all organizations and all companies, and we're trying to figure out how what the use cases are for us across the organization, including in bar prep and practice essay, practice answer grading would be a great area if you could get it done. And we and everybody else are working on that. And just like everything with AI, it's not quite there yet. It's getting there, and so there's some operational things that would help us, not only in the back end but in generating questions and the like. But I think the more salient question on AI is, if so, I've just spent a lot of time talking about this next gen exam is so basically, let's say 2017, 2018, people started saying, hey, this current bar exam bears no basis to what really lawyers do to determine what actual minimum competency to practice law is, which is the objective of the bar exam, or at least the stated objective of the bar exam. And so here we are in 2025, and we're almost there to having a new test. And I was at an event where the head of the National Conference of Bar Examiners was there, and someone raised their hand and said, okay, well, it's taken 3 years to kind of think about what the structure would be, another 5 years to develop. 2026, the first one's going to roll out. You're not going to be fully rolled out till 2028. What happens when AI makes all of this not relevant?
Correct.
And I thought, well, that's a very good question. And the answer, of course, is, well, I guess we need to develop another bar exam then.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Because it's, again, the skills a lawyer needs for minimum competency, you can't think about that without thinking about what tools they have.
Well, at Lawline, we've refocused our mission to prepare attorneys for the future of law, because things are changing so quickly. And we're in the process of launching an AI hub. Over the past year, we've probably built 75 hours of content geared towards it, but things that we launched a year and a half ago are probably not relevant anymore, because that's how fast things are changing. And so we want to have a dedicated space and location that it's easy to find. We're also in the process of launching an AI certification, just to help you make sure you've covered these 5 areas. You can sort of check the boxes and do that. You did mention, in addition to Helix, one of the cores of what you do is you've created, modules for the student learner, which sounded like maybe that was for free that you offer.
Yes.
That's used by 50,000 students. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. It's called Max by AccessLex, and it's a financial education curriculum that begins at your orientation of law school and continues throughout your 3 years. It's voluntary participation, but we operate it through the law schools. So law school has to buy in, and then the law school pushes it out to their students.
So the law schools are paying. Law schools are paying for it?
Nobody's paying for it. I mean, we're paying for it.
Buy in to use it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, the only product we charge for is the Helix.
Got it. Okay.
And so we put it out, and the law schools, push it to their students, and students participate. And again, it's not required. It's usually the early parts of it's required by the schools, but then they lose. They don't force once you get into the deeper modules. But it's we've been running that program now for about 9 years, and it's been very successful in helping students just understand kind of where they are and what they need to know, because law students aren't universally numerate. So
wait, so this is fascinating to me. It's the Max by AccessLex is solely focused on financial literacy, financial education.
Yeah, financial education is what I would say, not literacy.
So can you, and it's a 3-year program?
It's 3 years worth of modules, probably with 4 or 5 modules each.
I could do some financial education. How do I get in?
Go to law school and
I went
and sign up.
So explain, I am so curious what this curriculum is. What is geared specifically that's for law students versus anybody else?
Well, it's geared for timing of their journey in law school. So early on, it's about budgeting, it's about their student loans, it's about making right financial choices as a first-year law student when you are not working typically, and and have these expenses coming up. So it's not only like thinking about budgeting for yourself, but it's thinking about budgeting for the future of your law school, programs like that. Then as you get later into law school, we start having things such about understanding your student loan debt, but also thinking about credit card debt, thinking about investing, thinking about all of those things that you're going to experience in life or maybe have experienced in life. And it's not cumulative, so you can pick and choose if you want, so if you know something about one thing, you don't have to do the other. And so some people do the whole program, some people do bits and pieces, and it just is a great resource for us to have. And tied to that, though, we do in-person work as well, in-person presentations from our field staff who are all accredited financial counselors. I think we have 7 or 8 on staff who travel to law schools, and we'll give in-person presentations. A lot of those happen at orientation for the first year students, but also there are other times of the year in which they go in and do the presentations. In the spring, there's a lot of loan repayment in-person presentations.
Okay, so a lot of this is about the excessive cost of law school, the debt that you take on, and dealing with balancing credit card debt, loan debt, figuring out your budget, and helping you better prepare yourself financially for law school and beyond.
That is the core part of it, and certainly our in-person work is very focused on that. We also have another component of it is you can, as a student, can schedule one-on-one appointments with one of our accredited financial counselors for 30 minutes for free.
So let me ask you the $1 million question.
Yes, sir.
I commend you for bringing down the cost of bar prep $1,000 or helping be that when you see that in the space, whether partly from you and partly from the market.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to bring down the cost of legal education? And how are you guys, like, how do we do that? Yeah.
Well, that's more than the $1 million question, right? That's if we knew the answer, we'd certainly say.
What's the real, like, what's your, like, let's get through the box. Like, from you've been doing this 17 years,
mm-hmm.
and you see what's, it's obviously not just law school, it's college and universities. What does your gut tell you? Like, whether it's not happening, Dave, or something else, or the government has to stop giving. The government has to say no to loans, and then I don't know.
It's multiple factors, like anything. But look, there's some, kind of the harshest criticism I think I could give, for the most part, at least with respect to law schools, is that the government loan programs do not provide incentives to control costs at a law school or any graduate and professional program. Right now, the federal government, if you have a heartbeat, you're a U.S. citizen, and you're admitted to any law school that has access to Title IV funding, the government will send you a check as a law school for whatever price you say it costs to go there. And then not only will they do that, at the back end, if the person who borrowed those monies graduates and gets into a job that isn't sufficient to pay for the loan, the regular monthly loan payment, the government will reduce their payment to, depending on where we're at, 10, 15% of their income. And after a certain number of years, 20, 25, 30, depending on the program, the government will forgive that. So there's a huge subsidy that goes into all graduate and professional, including law students. And so what that means is, and think about this, and I'm not, these are good intentions. I'm not putting any bad intentions on law schools. If you're a law school, you're doing good things, and you say, oh, well, there's this new thing. AI is coming up. We need an AI clinic, or we need an AI specialty. Let's add it. Oh, that's going to add, $300 to tuition per student, or $400 to tuition per student. And there's no incentive for somebody to say, well, we can't raise tuition because, that means people won't come, or we'll have less volume. You can raise tuition because not only will you have somebody to finance it on the front end, on the back end, the consequences will be no different, right? If you're limited to a percentage of your income for the student, and you're like, more is better, right? Why would we cut something in order to add something?
So hypothetically, and maybe it's not hypothetical, because every time I read something in the news, everything seems to be frozen or stopped in terms of funding. It's only been a week in the new administration, but there's a lot of pauses in government spending right now. So let's just say next week, there's a pause in all government loans for 90 days, or a pause in general, because unless it's just not a blanket check. Or just say it stops completely from government. It's only private entities moving forward. And it's much more difficult to get the loans. What happens?
Well, if that existed going forward, 98% of higher education institutions would go out of business.
So it's interesting because, I mean, obviously there's a delta between the top and the lowest, but a lot of universities, education institutions, $1 billion. I mean, not all. I mean, a good majority have huge endowments. They're almost, you could say, private equity or money management firms that also have the school. And so it's interesting because there's, Harvard being the top, and so they wouldn't go out of it. They certainly wouldn't.
No.
But
there's 6,000 colleges
for sure. And the question becomes, I mean, obviously a cold turkey is never the right answer, but the question becomes, if there was a way to do that not overnight, does it eventually do what the goal is, which is bring down the cost of education in a competitive way? Because it has to, maybe one, there is too many schools, maybe potentially, you said 6,000, but that's my concern. My concern is student debt. And my concern is my focus is what is the obvious. We're talking about AI, and what we're talking about, we might have to even redo the bar exam, the new one. Things are changing so quickly. If we're not thinking about these and having these real conversations, we're kidding ourselves to think, this is not. And we got an insight during COVID what it was like to do online schools and pay $65,000 a year for that. And so I don't expect you to have the answer at all, but I just think, and I don't nearly have it. I hope you're closer to it than others, but I don't know. I just wanted to just kind of bring up the topic and see where it led.
No, it's a critical topic, and I think, but the other way to look at it, another way to look at it too, is that the issue, if you say, okay, the cost is a cost, and you could maybe nibble down at that, but it costs 75% of law schools and most educational institutions, their costs are personnel, right? Costs are personnel, and people have choices, and so it's hard to drive it down because you don't have a lot of wiggle room, particularly when you have a tenured faculty. But so there's another way to think about this, and I think about this is that the problem here is a mismatch between what the market's willing to pay lawyers, broadly speaking, and what it costs to educate a lawyer for a JD that's accredited by the American Bar Association. So, the American Bar Association accreditation rules, you know, I have long said to them and others that there needs to be more flexibility so every school doesn't have to look like Harvard. And there's some costs built into maintaining the accreditation for some schools that I believe are unnecessary. Again, that's a small component. The other aspect of it is, and again, this gets to the ABA standards as well, is we've proven that online education can work. And it wasn't just COVID. Online education has worked at programs outside of law for many, many years. And the ABA has been slow in allowing that to occur. And it's not that the legacy schools will offer any price discount for it, but it will allow new entrants in to offer that activity. So that could help there. But I think the real way to make the debt issue be more rational it goes with the state Supreme Courts and the state bars looking at what they consider unauthorized practice of law and
I just wrote that down.
And allowing people other than juris doctors licensed in the bar provide some legal work. And what that would tend to do is it would allow law schools, there'd be fewer JDs, right? And
well, it's companies, it's not just people. It's technology companies, which are already sort of somewhat doing it.
I just had this very discussion with I can't remember who, but it was about rural access to justice. And I said, look, the way to do this is if you want somebody, you aren't going to convince somebody to go, for any extended period of time, go out to someplace that is 200 miles away from the nearest theater and practice law, no matter how much money they could make out there potentially, because there are no lawyers there, there are one lawyer there.
Got it. Yeah.
Especially a young person. And I said, what you do is you declare an emergency if you're a state Supreme Court and say, we're going to allow this, you name it, to happen. And I assure you, if there's money to be made there, somebody will take that opportunity and see if they can make a run at it.
Do you think it's inevitable that in all jurisdictions in the next decade, unauthorized practice of law will greatly expand?
I think it will have to in some way, and whether it expands technically or it expands just I don't know if LegalZoom is still getting sued anymore, but they seem to have at least gotten past a lot of those initial activities.
They say in the UK you can go to Walmart and get your will done. Do you have 5 more minutes?
I do. I absolutely.
Cool. Let's switch from this serious topic to a little bit more fun. Do you recall how long you've been a customer at Lawline for? Approximately?
At least 10 years.
10 years. Fantastic.
At least 10 years.
Any input you can share, things that we can do to improve, things that you really like, things that, just from the platform to the content. 10 years is a long time to be a customer somewhere. Why have you been with us for 10 years? I don't know. Give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's.
Well, so what I can tell you, the number one thing that would have, I don't know if it's the number one thing that kept me there, was this. The number one thing that would make me leave is if I couldn't rely on you to efficiently and effectively report my CLE.
Interesting.
The biggest issue I had with other places trying to fill out my own forms and send them places and deal with all that, that no fuss, no muss is the best thing that's ever happened from my standpoint. And it makes me, if that went away, I would definitely cause me to lose you. But broadly speaking, the breadth of the programming, the content and the delivery is usually very, very high. And I take things that I take classes that I need to know or I want to know for my role and what I'm doing. But I also sometimes take classes I'm just interested in as well, just as on a personal level. And I think the variety is great for that as well. And I think if I were to kind of ask for more, and this is only because I have to do this as part of my CLE requirements, I can only do so many non-asynchronous or
Yeah.
yeah, or I don't even know
Yeah.
the word, but
That's right.
I need live. Pennsylvania requires
Yeah.
live attendance, and so to the extent there would be more consistent and a broader selection of live events, that would be
You're saying in
helpful.
person or live webcasts?
Live webcasts,
Got
yeah.
it. Got
Yeah,
it.
live webcasts. At least for me, that's my technical requirement. So,
So
but I think I because I typically I don't like to go sit in a room and
yeah,
it's not convenient for me.
got it. It's first of all, in terms of the efficiency and of the reporting, excited to share that with the team, and I might even do a clip of that
Sure.
because the team it has been it is actually not by accident that that happens. It has been a real focus of ours. And I think not we used to do it once a month or twice a month. I think we do it I don't know if it's daily. We do it very regularly now. And not only that, I'm pretty sure I can't even keep track of all the updates. Now we also notify you, or it's clear on the site when it is reported,
You
which
do. You do
I don't know
notify.
anybody who does that right now. And we spent time, energy, and money building that to make it efficient because we knew how important it is to feel that it's taken care of. Secondly, we put a lot of time, money, and energy. I don't know if you use it at all or focus on it on our CLE tracker.
Mhm.
Do you
I don't use that because I have pretty easy access on my dashboards on
got it?
the thing and
That's
but
why it's important for you for it to be passed over as soon as possible because you
Mhm.
use bar. Got it. Cool. Then my final question to you and your personal professional development and learning. Anything on the radar in something a book that you've read recently, a nonfiction book, or your favorite book or podcast that that's helped you personally learn or grow, or that you just enjoy listening to that you think you want to pass along to others to know?
Yeah, so I actually I tend to look for things that focus on kind of managing teams. I manage a pretty big team and a professional team. And so the last book I read is a book called The Attributes by Rich Divany. I think that's how you say his name. And it's focused on hidden drivers of optimal performance, both in individuals and teams. And his previous life was as a SEAL team leader, and but he's adapted this to a kind of a business type activity. And I saw him speak someplace, and I got the book, and again, it's to me, some of it, if you've been around the block long enough, like anything, you kind of some of it's not new information, but I like to read things that just refresh memory and make it new and fresh to help me do my job and
Yeah.
run the organization. And so that's kind of from like what I'd say a work standpoint. From a leisure standpoint, I'll read some nonfiction, but I'm a person. I read the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Philadelphia Inquirer, and New Yorker and Atlantic Monthly, and I read tons of that kind of thing to keep current with what's going on in the world and what are the trends and how to and try to just keep my situational awareness around as to how that may impact what I'm doing either personally or professionally.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. Like when we start like the amount of great content that's out there.
Mm.
I found my LinkedIn feed has been
Mhm.
phenomenal because over the years I've followed so many people in legal tech, and it is just the amount of information
Mhm.
and things that are happening I could just spend all my days on LinkedIn and be good. And podcast, are you a podcast guy at all or no?
I have listened to some in the past, but I'm just not it's hard for me to listen like that because I find myself doing other things. I can do it if I'm on the treadmill or something like that, but I've tried podcasting and I know I'm on here, but
Yeah, no,
I've
I
struggled
mean,
with that.
this is a podcast, but I mean like the professional podcast that get, millions of there's different things that there's a company called Wondery. And those are the ones where it's like sound and music and narration. They have like 50, 60. The one podcast that I really love is called Business Wars. It has 80 episodes and it's like CVS versus Walgreens, KB Toys versus Toys R Us. And it goes through 5 or 6 episodes and it does reenactments with sound and things of like what went down and how to build out. It's so good. So good. It got me through COVID when we were in lockdown in Barcelona. And the final thing I would say, is there any, because sometimes it's good to ask a question on the spot, and this is my last question, I promise. Is there anything that Lawline can do to help, law students without charging, right? Like if we were to develop something based on sort of knowing our product and what we're doing and knowing where the need is, anything else like putting on the spot to see if it generates some idea real quick of how we can help.
Sure. Well, so what I think is something that students want and need and strive for, and they actually are willing to pay for it at some level, is support for their supplemental support for their doctrinal classes. So I mean, you might know those things. The old school were the case briefs and the essentially the Cliff Notes versions of their textbooks. And now, I mean, there's some things like videos and audio are very much in for today's students, and keying some activities to, or some programming towards Prosser on Tort's casebook or whatever, that kind of would supplement their review and their studying, and offer them a kind of almost like a day-to-day opportunity to keep up with their work and or hear something explained or hear a concept explained. I could see that would be pretty interesting. We've thought about how, and again, literally thought, that's it. We've done nothing more than that, about how we could potentially help fill that because look, there's products out there, and people are paying for them, but again, you talk about AI, replicating those products, is getting cheaper and cheaper. And so an entity, who's willing to provide that service, in either free or at a very low cost, I think would be very attractive if you could figure out how to do it, in a way that made sense for you.
Sounds hard, but I was hoping for an easy one step, but anything important is hard to do. Chris, really, really appreciate everything we've covered. I think this was a phenomenal episode. For me, at least, I got value.
Oh, good.
And if I got value, I know other people will, because it's a really important topic. Bar prep, school education, financial education, what's happening and what's changing, where we see it going. You've covered it all. This won't be the last time we speak. I know for sure. I can guarantee that.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much.
All right, great. Thank you. I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye-bye.